So here we go, part three of Program Design Principles. This is where we're going to look at recovery and try to develop a better understanding of what it is, when it's appropriate, and how to really make sure we're making good use of the recovery that we're planning to integrate into our program design. So this is the last module of the three in Program Design Principles. So hopefully after this, you're able to walk out the door and put together some decent programming for yourself. But as always, please do feel free to get in touch if you have any questions or concerns. I want to address three types of recovery today. And I mean, recovery goes way beyond what I want to talk about. It's a pretty big buzzword in athletic development these days. But with reference to how it can be used or possibly misused in our training environment that we use, it's really in one of these three ways that I want to go through. And I want to start with interset recovery. This is probably something that most of us have not actually had a chance to explore in too much detail yet. Then I'll move into active recovery. We'll talk about what that means. And then we'll talk about integrating recovery days, and in some and very rare cases, I will say right up front, recovery weeks. If we're going to take anything away from this slide, I want you to think about how recovery is what makes us stronger. Yes, absolutely. It's the right kind of recovery from the right kind of training that's really purposeful and meaningful. The rest of it, a lot of the time, might be less necessary than we think, especially if it's not being done with meaningful and deliberate approach. So let's start with interset recovery. Interset recovery, hard training is definitely the best reason you're ever going to need to understand recovery well. Recovery doesn't have to wait though until your training session's finished. There are plenty of great ways to boost your training performance and jumpstart your recovery in the middle of a workout. And this concept is probably best understood as interset recovery. So if that's not a new term for you, maybe it's because you're already practicing interset recovery, and congratulations to you for doing that. It's probably one of the smartest ways you can train. And I think that's especially true with athletes who might only have 45 minutes or 50 minutes or an hour to get an entire training session in. And that's often the case with us. We're trying to fit a meaningful, deliberate training session inside of a 60-minute block. By the time we're changed and warmed up and ready to do work, we might be dealing with a time slot that's as little as 45 minutes to get a good quality workout in. And I'm not saying that you can't do that, but a lot of the time we're pressed for time near the end of it, and something's got to give. And sometimes it's those less fatiguing or accessory exercises that could have actually been done as interset recovery exercises. Interset recovery is exactly what the name implies. It's during those long rest periods between primary sets of work or high intensity sets of work. Is there something that we could be doing for ourselves that would qualify as interset recovery? Is there something that would not be fatiguing and would not impede with the performance of the exercise that we were doing? Often the answer to that question is yes. And if we look at something like this, and again, this is probably something that if we were in a classroom together as a large group right now, we'd be filling this block out together. But this is a way to kind of explain how interset recovery can work for you. And in this particular example, we've got an athlete who's planning on doing two primary core group exercises on this given day: a barbell back squat at 3 to 4 sets of 6 to 10 reps at a pretty lofty load target, greater than 75% of their 1 rep max. But they're going to be resting 3 minutes in between each set. And then again, later on in the workout with the barbell bench press, looking at 3 to 4 sets, 6 to 10 on a load greater than 75 with 3 minutes of rest. And so is there a secondary or accessory exercise that we can put in that dark red row for each of those two categories, category 1 and 2? Is there something that we can put in that dark red row that won't interfere with the performance of the barbell back squat or the barbell bench press, respectively, but will be meaningful and purposeful and exercise that this particular athlete knows that he or she should be and could be working on? So we're trying to fill in these metrics here, and it's a lot easier to do than you think. And this is probably going to be something that's different for everyone. So while I might have every single athlete on the basketball team doing a barbell back squat and a barbell bench press on this given day, these secondary or accessory exercises that follow those up, that end up being in the accessory column or accessory category, sorry, those might be different based on the player, based on their injury history, or based on the area that we know they really need to improve. And just to kind of fill this out for an example here, we could have somebody doing the teacup shoulder mobility drill. And if you're not familiar with that exercise, there's a great video of it on strongerbcss.ca. It's a shoulder mobility drill that is unilateral. It gives an athlete a chance to basically really tax their shoulder mobility, but also do a range comparison, checking in with that left side versus the right. And to be able to do that in between sets of barbell back squat, you're going to be experiencing no fatigue, and it's not going to interfere with that exercise whatsoever. And then later on down the line, in between sets of barbell bench press, I have the same athlete doing a medicine ball P and F raise. Once again, that's a unilateral exercise. We're doing it on one side at a time. It's a single leg exercise that involves knee and hip flexion with good postural control and core balance, coming down and placing the medicine ball on the outside of the standing foot, and then doing a straight arm raise across on a diagonal over the opposite shoulder along the frontal plane. Again, this is an exercise that would probably produce very, very little to no fatigue at the muscular strength side, especially in the upper body. And it's definitely something that would be very, very purposeful for an athlete who had a history of ankle sprain, who wanted to work on balance in the lower limb, who wanted to work on and improve postural control and functional core strength. There's an endless list in terms of the benefits of an exercise like this. And at the same time, it's causing little to no fatigue. So moving on to active recovery now, I want to talk about active recovery as dedicating an entire exercise session to recovery. And I don't want to confuse this with active rest. Active rest is still very much happening during a high intensity or a hard workout, whereas active recovery would be me saying this entire 45-minute session or 50-minute or 60-minute session or what have you, I'm going to be allocating to low intensity, pretty easy work that is still deliberate, it's still purposeful, it's still very justifiable. And this is more for the case of somebody who's probably just completed 3 or 4 consecutive days of hard training and they're experiencing some delayed onset soreness, some fatigue, some heavy legs, low motivation to work out, maybe not sleeping so well, all good reasons for an active recovery day. But we want to make sure that the active recovery workout that we design is suitable. Is it actually going to target the areas that we're looking for improvement in? Is it actually going to help you limber back up? Is it going to help you maybe work out any areas of high resting tension or alleviate stress in any other area of muscular strain, whether it's soft tissue or connective tissue? So we need to kind of do a little bit of research ahead of time if we're going to plan a proper active recovery workout. And this is where we expect anybody to basically be able to fill out something like this. This is a template that's expecting somebody to be able to categorically define, 3 or 4 areas based on their purpose. Include some details about the exercises and the drills they'll be doing in that category and how much, what kind of volume of those exercises and drills. And this doesn't have to be anything too fancy. The metrics will differ based on the category. And by the time it's complete, it could look like, something as simple as this. There's some aerobic preparation on there. I'm going to be working on a stationary bike for 10 minutes. Then I'm moving into some mobility and activation work. I'll be using a foam roller, maybe some lacrosse ball massage for that. Then I'm going to move into some shoulder mobility and stability work. And then finally, I'm going to finish off with some static stretching and some yoga poses that are really going to kind of target hip mobility and maybe some functional core strength. And that's it. But even something like this is a lot more purposeful and deliberate than somebody who just says, well, I'm going to need to take a recovery day today, and that's why I'm not going to be doing my regular workout. Right. So if this is you think you're somebody who benefits from this type of framework on an occasional basis, make sure that you're prepared to be able to kind of fill in something like this and include it with your program design. And lastly, I want to talk about recovery days and recovery weeks. And this is probably pretty rare, especially in a course like a senior level fitness class or a junior level fitness class at a school like ours. A lot of athletes who work hard and train hard, but if you're taking a course like this, it's hopefully so that you can do some deliberate work and deliberate practice every day. And when we're talking about athletes who have allocated days and weeks that are pre-planned ahead of time in their schedule for the sake of recovery, it's because these athletes are using a yearly training program, and at the very least, they're on some sort of long-term athlete development training program that involves a very strategic and periodized approach to your conditioning so that it aligns with peak competition time so that you can taper down for high priority competitions. In these cases, a planned recovery day, or in a rare case, a planned recovery week, it would be put right before a big competition, maybe something that was international or national, something that was a very high performance make or break scenario. And they'd probably be put on the tail end of a high volume, high intensity training block. And if that's you, let's talk about it some more. I'd love to see what the training calendar and the lead up to these scheduled recovery days or recovery weeks look like. If you are that person, you're dedicating these training days and weeks specifically to recovery, I really hope that you can answer at least these two questions here. What are you hoping to accomplish over the course of these days off, and what are the other influences that exist beyond just not training that are also going to be helping you out? And I really want to finish this whole thing by spending a little bit of time here, especially when it comes time to talk about recovery, because it's not just not doing hard work. That recovery entails. When we talk about recovery for athletes, sure, it's backing off the hard work and the high intensity training, but there are so many other variables that influence whether or not you recover effectively that we're doing a massive disservice if we simply just talk about, recovery means taking a day off of doing hard work. Because if I'm being honest, I think all five of these listed here are equally, if not more important than the idea of not working hard on a recovery day. Nutrition, hydration, sleep and rest, athletic therapy and sports medicine, and last but definitely not least, making sure that psychological, mental health, and cognitive stresses are being dealt with and managed as well. Any one of these five can play a massive role on undermining anything you think is benefiting you by simply not training or not training hard on that day. And I can't tell you how many times I'm dealing with athletes who tell me they're taking their recovery seriously, and I walk by them in the hallway and they're eating fast food for lunch, telling me that they're staying up till 3 a.m. in group chat conversations or working on who knows what with respect to school. So they're getting poor sleep and rest. They hydrate poorly, and the list goes on. And so these are five really good reasons to consider whether or not you are serious about recovery, or if there's any more room for you to become more serious about recovery. And I do want to leave it there. I want to make sure that we look at this R word, recovery, as a little bit more of a holistic approach to taking our training seriously when we aren't just training hard and working at the red line, because that's extremely important. And the sooner we recognize that the value of recovery hinges on all of these variables, the sooner we can start doing it properly and making it really count for us. So that's the end of the part 3, and that's the final module in this session. So hopefully by now you've got some pretty good tools to start putting some ideas down on paper when it comes to program design. By no means are you expected to be able to do this entirely on your own just because you've completed these 3 modules. I would strongly encourage anybody who wants a little bit of help working with their program design to reach out to me. My email address is here, and you can always get in touch with me through the website as well, strongerbcss.ca.